Paula. Okay, so my name is Gil Yaron. I'm going to talk to you about the example of some work funded by DFID in Ethiopia, the Strategic Climate Institutions Program. And I'll just give you some context. So, government of Ethiopia has recently come up with a strategy for mobilizing a very large amount of money. They suspect over a 20-year period they might be able to bring $100 billion to transform the economy. And they'll do this on the basis of climate resilient, green economic growth. And that involves technology, that involves changing delivery in all sectors. And clearly that's at a very high macro level. And DFID came along and said, well, fantastic idea. Probably in order to realize that dream, you're going to have to, vision, I think, technically, you're going to have to strengthen institutions right across the board in order to really turn that vision into investment plans that can attract funding and then implement those plans in order to produce results on the ground at the micro level. So the program I'm involved with is the monitoring and evaluation of £30 million, so it's a relatively small amount in the context of the whole scene, but it's still a fairly sizable investment for DFID. And it really has delivery through two strands. So one is a fund where government and civil society, academia can bid for support for institutional projects. And that supports institution building related to climate change adaptation, strictly speaking. On the other hand, there's an innovation centre, which is run by the World Bank, which has funding for startups. It's all about clean technology and producing increased resilience through that technology, but also influencing the policy environment to be more supportive of the goals of climate change adaptation. So, in terms of evaluation, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, we have a number of challenges. We're addressing this whole program. I'm leading a team for a company called LTS. But within that program, you've got those different strands. So for the fund that I mentioned, the M&E for grantees, people who get money, is run by ITAD, and we don't know yet who will do that monitoring and evaluation for the Innovation Centre. But what we've got to do, clearly, is to find a set of tools that are consistent all across the program and the project level to address both macro and micro issues. The kind of unifying tool that we've got is the theory of change, and it's been incredibly useful bringing together stakeholders from government, from civil society, academia, and the private sector to really try and map out how they're going to translate these funds coming in at the top through to benefits right at the bottom, farmers or individuals making use of these new technologies. So we've got, through the theory of change, we've got pathways through which organisational and institutional capacity building and learning are going to be constructed. And we've also got lots of assumptions that are going on which could enable or prevent these changes from occurring. So theory of change is really a vital tool for the rest of the analysis. Perhaps the most innovative thing to look at as an evaluator is the way that we're actually going to track change within institutional strength. And specifically, institution building related to climate change adaptation. So what we've done, working with a whole group of people, is to take the kind of indicator that McKinsey have in their OCAT, which is the Organisation Capacity Assessment Tool, and to use that structure, but to change the content very dramatically to focus it on climate change adaptation. And so the areas that we're really interested in are the capacity of these new organisations within government set up to deliver the strengthening that will allow those funds to flow through. We're going to look at, we have been looking at planning, monitoring and evaluation capacity, delivery, learning, and their ability to communicate what they've found and influence other parts of government. So just to give you an example, we've got 4 areas in that, what we call an OCAN, and just looking at the first one, there's 19 components, 19 questions across all of them, but in this first one there's just 5. And so we are looking at something like knowledge of the government's climate resilient green economy strategy. Now, what's quite important here is that we've got external evaluators who are kind of working to a very specific set of guidance, and what we're doing is making sure that when we go back to these institutions, we ask the same questions in the same way to the same people. People in the institutions are also well defined, so they've got to be the people specifically responsible for delivering this CRG work, plus one other person above that level, so a kind of managerial person, and we'll go back to the same people each year, so that we're tracking what we hope is a consistent story. Even with all that kind of care in the way we've constructed the tracking, I think we have to be very, very careful when we start comparing scores over time, because, for example, what we're finding is, at the outset you get a lot of institutions with a score of 1, but that might mean that they're a very weak climate change unit within a strong institution, or in fact they're in an institution which is completely hopeless. So that has very different implications. Secondly, what tends to be found from the kind of management consultancy world with this type of scoring is that everyone starts off by saying, yes, we kind of know where we're going, we don't have too many problems. And then after a year, they realise they do have a lot of problems, and they start to understand what they don't know. So you might actually find scores falling, even though they're getting better in terms of capacity. A third point is actually the process of going through this has proved very useful. So initially, a lot of these new institutions complained, oh, we don't have the time, we've got so many demands on our time, why are you asking us these things? But they quite soon found it a very useful way of assessing where they needed to go in terms of developing capacity. And indeed, we found that this indicator has been taken up and used in other parts of government, which is a very good thing. And finally, just want to highlight from an evaluation perspective, we have been able to try and form a control group that is using this indicator with one part of government that is intended to get a climate change unit, but it won't be through this SCIP fund.